Welcome to the Common Man Football Show. My name is James Coburn, and today's episode, we're doing a topic idea submitted by Chase Cameron. He's a guy on Twitter, fan of the Denver Broncos, and he basically wanted to see a quarterback breakdown of all the quarterbacks on the Denver Broncos roster based on analytics. And I was a little hesitant to do this for Chase because I don't have a ton of nice information, I guess. Because, again, people like to hear good things about their team. But I figured, you know what, I just need to do it because I think it's a good sort of showcase for a lot of different topics related to quarterback analytics. And, of course, the quarterbacks that are on this team right now. Because the Broncos are just not in the best situation quarterback-wise, and it is something that I hope in the future they address. But the terms you should know when it comes to quarterback analysis, or at least the stuff I'm going to be talking about. One is high school production. High school production score is derived from the touchdown to interception ratio, the completion percentage, and that is measured against high school peers since the 2004 recruiting class, or more specifically the 2007 NFL draft class. All of that information in terms of the high school quarterback stuff is available on giraffecoburn.wordpress.com. You can just go down and type in high school, and it'll come up with articles related to that, and including one article that has my entire spreadsheet on there in terms of all the scores and stuff. So that is what high school production is. You're basically comparing touchdown to reception ratio, completion percentage compared to peers, and that is how that score is formulated. And then, of course, we have the FBS stat score. The FBS stat score takes into account the same things as the high school production score in terms of touchdown to reception ratio, completion percentage. It works off a 10-year average at the FBS level. That way, you're able to compare how a quarterback performed in the 2000s to how a quarterback performed in the 80s or the 70s or the 60s, because you're comparing their performance against their peers in their era. But the only other thing that adds as well is a strength of schedule score. The strength of schedule score, according to College Football Reference, that's where that number is taken from, is from College Football Reference. If you don't know what the strength of schedule score is or what it means, just go to College Football Reference, and they have a definition for how they formulate their score. But I added a layer of strength of schedule because, quarterbacks who play bad competition, or at least less than ideal strength of schedules, typically will have better statistics than guys who play, really strong strength of schedules. So I figure you need to have some way to balance things a bit so that you know what you're looking at, when you're talking about a quarterback. Because there are quarterbacks who perform really well and other quarterbacks who don't perform very well, or maybe perform less than somebody else. But obviously there is innate differences between a quarterback who plays a tough strength of schedule and a weak strength of schedule. So I figured, you need to have a way to kind of take that into account. And at the FBS level, I'm able to do that. At the high school level, I just don't have enough data to really do that yet. It's something I hope to work towards, but right now I just don't have a readily available way of doing strength of schedule at the high school level. But I do at the college level, and that is where that FBS stat score is taken. Other than that stuff, we're also going to look at Trevor Siemian in terms of his NFL production. And specifically because he was one who had enough starts to qualify for that. So we'll take a look at Trevor Simeon in terms of some positives and negatives. And then we'll get to pretty much the top three quarterbacks on the team: Trevor Siemian, Paxton Lynch, and of course the new draft pick, Chad Kelly. We'll look at all those guys specifically because there's not enough information on Kyle Slaughter that I could find because he's an FCS guy. But with all that stuff out of the way, let's get to it. Let's get to how Trevor Siemian looked, how Paxton Lynch looked data-wise, and of course how Chad Kelly looks. So starting with Trevor Siemian, when it comes to his high school production and his college production, his high school production score is a 52.40 out of 100 in high school. Based on my data since the 2007 NFL draft class, 100% of long-term starting quarterbacks had at least a 69 or higher score in terms of high school production. with 100% of multiple Pro Bowl quarterbacks having at least an 84 or higher in terms of their high school production. Trevor Siemian did not hit the long-term starter threshold, let alone the Pro Bowl threshold. And long-term starter also 64 starts or more in their career. So Trevor Siemian, from the very get-go, does not look like someone who will reach 64 starts in his career based on his high school data. On top of his FBS stat score of 45.24 out of 100. Based on my data as well, 100% of long-term starting quarterbacks since 1958 NFL draft class had at least a 26 or higher, so he technically passes the long-term starter threshold when it comes to starting quarterbacks, but you just don't want to be a quarterback with an above-average production score. I don't really care who you are. There's only been a handful of guys, and most of the guys that have below-average FBS stat scores are typically quarterbacks that took a while to develop into just an average quarterback at the NFL level. Jake Delhomme comes to mind, Jeff Garcia, guys like that, who kind of took a while to develop. And then, of course, the majority of Pro Bowl quarterbacks hit at least 80 or higher in terms of the FBS stat score. The only quarterbacks who were Pro Bowlers who did not hit 80 or higher in terms of their passer rating, or at least their passing, their FBS stat score, was Brett Favre, Matt Hasselbeck, Michael Vick, and Drew Bledsoe. 90% of multiple Pro Bowl quarterbacks since 1958 had at least 80 or higher. Those who didn't, I just mentioned. And the bottom line is, for Trevor Siemian to become a multiple Pro Bowl quarterback, he would have to become an outlier. But an outlier not only in terms of his high school production, but also an outlier in terms of his college production. Because, I mean, realistically, based on his 45.24 score, there's never been a Pro Bowl quarterback, a multiple Pro Bowl quarterback, to have a 45.24 college production score. The highest college production score for multiple Pro Bowl is about 49. So Trevor Siemian really doesn't hit the bottom end threshold of Pro Bowl quarterbacks, nor does he hit that with his high school production. And thus, I just don't think things are going to look very good for Trevor Siemian in the future based on his production profile. And at the NFL level, things don't really look that great either. Just so you're familiar with the terms, this is the average statistics for quarterbacks who win 90 percentile or higher wins, 80 percentile or higher wins, and 50 percentile or higher wins. 50 percentile or higher wins is essentially quarterbacks that are 500 or better. 80 percentile or higher wins is quarterbacks that win about 10, 11 to 12 games. And then 90 percentile or higher wins is quarterbacks who win about 12 games, 13 games, 14 games, 15 games, all the way up to 16 games. So it's quarterbacks that essentially are winning the division, winning a bye week, being a first team seed kind of team. And based on the data for Trevor Siemian in terms of 2016, he has been below average in terms of every single statistic when it comes to the averages of 50 percentile higher wins, 80 percentile higher wins, and 90 percentile higher wins. The only sort of statistic that he actually was above average in was his touchdown to interception ratio, which is only slightly above average, but his completion percentage is below average, his yards per attempt is below average, his adjusted yards per attempt is below average, and his quarterback rating is below average. And not only that, his third percentage, or basically third down conversion percentage, is 18.16, which is way, way, way low compared to the averages of 50 or higher wins, 80 or higher wins, and 90 or higher wins in terms of percentile. So that is just not good. It's just really not good. And the only things that he really performed kind of well in, again, is team-specific things like win percentile and point differential, which are more team-related things than actual quarterback-related things. So his statistics from college and high school don't really look that good, and his statistics at the NFL level are not giving off good vibes either. So I would say it might be time to consider another option at quarterback for the Denver Broncos, which they've been trying to do, obviously, but I would say they definitely should try to look into that based on Trevor Siemian's play. Then we get to the hero, or at least the hopeful. You hope he becomes the guy in Paxton Lynch. Paxton Lynch, in terms of his high school production score, had a .50 high school production score. That's not a typo. It's a .50. It's not. He was not a very good high school production quarterback. Was basically bottom end in terms of his completion percentage and touchdown to interception ratio at the high school level. He was, however, to have a pretty good FBS production score of 88.31 out of 100, which again was the year he was drafted, at least the final year that he played college football. And while that is impressive, and as you can clearly see, he pretty much surpasses the starter threshold and the Pro Bowl threshold when it comes to his FBS stat score, it doesn't take away the high school production data, which has been very clear from 2004 until now, that you need these things to match. You need to have a quarterback who hits the high school production thresholds he needs to hit and the college production thresholds that he needs to hit. You need to have that sort of symbiosis, connection, if you will. Because a lot of times high school production data basically tells you if the offense is inflating things a lot. I mean, that's the main thing I've noticed is there's lots of quarterbacks who go to these sort of spread-heavy offenses, and we're kind of below average in terms of high school production, and they're able to put up relatively good to great stats. But if they get to the NFL level, everything kind of falls apart because they're no longer around that offense. They're no longer playing the level of competition they're playing anymore. And that is my biggest fear in terms of Paxton Lynch. I think while he did produce really well for a quarterback in terms of his FBS stat score, I just think when it comes to the body of evidence in terms of starting quarterbacks and even Pro Bowl quarterbacks since 2007 in terms of high school production, he just doesn't hit that threshold. And it's significantly below average. I mean, this isn't a guy that is like a 67 score or a 68 score. He's significantly below average when it comes to his high school production score, indicating someone that I would worry about in terms of long-term projection. Based on this information, I don't think it would be wise to project him as a long-term starter at the NFL level, nor would I project him as a guy who's ever going to be able to put up high-quality NFL play based on his high school production data. So, unfortunately, when it comes to Paxton Lynch, I just don't see very good things in the future. It doesn't take away from the fact that he may actually end up starting. And the reason he would end up starting is because of the lack of competition on the Denver Broncos roster. But it doesn't mean that he is going to be a high-quality NFL player. It doesn't mean he's going to be a high-quality quarterback. So I think he's in the right spot to eventually earn a starting position. But I don't think that is going to be indicative of a great quarterback as much as the competition that is around him. Which, of course, takes us to the last man in the competition, at least the theoretical competition, in Chad Kelly. Chad Kelly, of course, is Mr. Irrelevant. He was the last player drafted in the 2017 NFL draft class. And based on his high school production score, he had a 33.14 high school production score with an 87.59 FBS stat score. He's another guy like Paxton Lynch, to where his high school production score does not hit the long-term starter threshold, let alone the Pro Bowl starting threshold. But he does hit the starting threshold and Pro Bowl threshold when it comes to his FBS stat score. But again, I can't stress this enough. Just because a quarterback performs really well at the college level, sometimes that is indicative of things kind of overinflating things, making you better than you really are when it comes to the college level, because tons of quarterbacks get those advantages because of playing at the college level. It's not the NFL level. It's a lesser sort of competition in terms of every single facet. And I think in Chad Kelly's case, while he does have the FBS stat score, he has the FBS stat production, indicative of a long-term starter to Pro Bowl player. His high school production just doesn't match up because, again, every single quarterback from 2007 NFL draft class to now hit these specific thresholds. Russell Wilson hit the Pro Bowl quarterback threshold. Andrew Luck hit the Pro Bowl quarterback threshold. Cam Newton hit the Pro Bowl quarterback threshold. Kirk Cousins hit at least the starting quarterback threshold. Like, the bottom line is, when it comes to these high school production thresholds, is whether you like the high school production threshold or you think it's dumb or not, the trends are the trends. The trends are what they are. And unfortunately, there is no outlier to point to in the since 2007. There is no quarterback who had a below average quarterback score in high school to become a long-term starting quarterback at the NFL level. And because of that, this is the main issue with Chad Kelly. This is the main issue with Paxton Lynch. It's the main issue with Trevor Siemian, is you have 3 quarterbacks who in high school had average to below average high school production scores, and their college scores are a little bit better. I mean, when you look at Paxton Lynch and you look at Chad Kelly, they had at least above average. I mean, they hit at least the Pro Bowl threshold when it comes to their FBS stat scores. But when you don't have that connection of high school production with FBS stat production, it really gets in the way of our projection in terms of figuring out what they're going to be long term, because I just don't see positive things in the future for Trevor Siemian, nor do I see positive things in the future for Paxton Lynch, nor do I see positive things in the future when it comes to Chad Kelly based on data. And as much as I would be surprised and I would probably want to see something interesting happen, because again, I'm not trying to just hate on the Broncos situation. I'm just telling you what the facts are, and the facts are that none of the quarterbacks that are on the roster right now, the Denver Broncos, look like guys that are going to become long-term starters to Pro Bowl, to high-quality NFL quarterbacks. And as much as I hope that this isn't the case, and again, this is the biggest thing, I hope this isn't the case. I hope that one of these guys could become an outlier. But again, there's never been, if there was a quarterback who had a below-average high school production score and became a long-term starter to Pro Bowl player, I would be the first guy to tell you. I'm serious. But because there isn't that type of guy in the data, I just can't say anything other than hope for the best. So again, my name is James Coburn. You can find my work at draftcoburn.wordpress.com. You can also follow me on Twitter at Geometrics. And if you like this content, and if you want more content like this, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. Share this video as well with anybody that you know, and I'll talk to you guys in the next video. Peace.